Facing challenges and overcoming setbacks is part of doing business. Whether you have the expertise to survive them or not could mean the difference between success or failure. Welcome to We Are Women, featuring revealing conversations that provide invaluable insights into the success secrets of female masterminds. A must listen for every entrepreneurial woman. Now here's your host, Janine Vosper.
Hi, it's Janine Vosper, and welcome to this episode of the We Are Women podcast. I have the beautiful and talented Di Russell with me today. I'm looking forward to this conversation, Di. There's so many points that we are on point with, and I'm sure that it's going to be a discussion of interest for everybody. And Di is the principal and founder and mentor of Di Live, which is a unique enterprise that provides education, encouragement and empowerment programs and networks for personal and professional leadership. Di worked closely with her great mentor and friend, the late Bob Proctor, and she has a deep understanding of the mind and the universal law and how we live authentically, fully expressing how we truly are. So widowed in her early 20s with two very young children, Di believes in living the fullest life possible, an experience she shares with her 3 adult daughters and 6 grandchildren. Welcome, Di. I'm going to be so interested in talking particularly about your experience with Bob Proctor, because if anyone has not come across him, as he was an incredible mentor. And I know just the simplest thing, I received a daily quote from him for about 10 years, I think it was. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. It's so good to be here. Thank you, Jenny.
That your experience with Bob Proctor, and for those that don't know him, do you want to explain about who the man was?
Yes, and I didn't find him until he was 81. And so at that point, he'd been studying this information of universal law and, helping people to really understand who they are and rise to be that, to live their full potential. He'd been doing that for 60 years when I met him at 81. And then I worked with him for 6 years, the first 3 from a distance. So I attended live trainings as a consultant in his organisation. But in the last 3 years, a course of events saw me spend a lot of time with him one-on-one, especially in 2020 during COVID. I was in Canada, couldn't get a flight home, and spent a lot of time with him in his home. He'd call me up and say, "How are you doing? Come see me." And I still have to pinch myself because I didn't know who he was until I found him on YouTube, actually, in 2016. And then to have that happen in the next 6 years was just incredible. And Janine, you know of him, and what he shared with me in those afternoons that we spent, I'll never forget.
What an incredible experience, Di, to have been in that space. And obviously, when we're talking about universal laws and opportunities and things happening for a reason, then that's an excellent example of that.
Yes. And even the events that led, I can, as Steve Jobs says, you can join the dots looking back, and I can see there's one event that sounds crazy that saw me sitting there with him. It would have been 5 years later. So 5 years prior to that, I'd been on a retreat in Ireland, and I'm very intuitive, and at that point was only just becoming aware of intuition at a high level. And I had an intuitive thought to cross the room and speak to a woman who had really impressed me. And I was shy back then and didn't want to do that, and had a bit of an argument with myself, but finally crossed the room and spoke to this woman. As we do. And that short conversation, it was the last day of a week-long retreat and the last session, and we were all about to leave. So I spoke to her, and one thing led to another. We stayed in touch, and that saw me, by a course of different events, be in Canada in January 2020, which is what then enabled me to spend that time with Bob. So
yeah, that's incredible. And listening to that intuition, I've been in sales for a very long time, and I think that's one of the ways that I have been more successful than others, is just by listening and paying attention to the intuition, paying attention to what sort of conversation needs to happen, paying attention to, oh, I need to stop here and do this now, paying attention to who you need to have the conversation with. It does make a big difference.
It's huge. It's huge. That very same connection led me to, and a friend had said to me, ask this woman if she knows anyone that is interested in what you're teaching. And I, again, didn't want to. The old conditioning in me was like, oh, no, don't be that person. And then when I did reach out to this friend and said, ask the question, she said, yes, I do. I'm going to put you in touch with some sales managers in a certain organization over there. And I went and met with them. They emailed me straight away. I went and met with them and then gained a speaking engagement over there in Montreal. So easily, so quickly, just by following, like you said, that intuition. It's all about just the ease and flow of following it. Yeah.
And that's part of that universal law, isn't it? It's meant to be easy.
That's right. That's right. It is easy. We add the, oh, it's meant to be, and I was saying to a crowd the other night, whoever started that rumor that life's not meant to be easy, like, where did they get that from? I mean, we have plenty of proof that life can be challenging, but it's not meant to be hard, Yeah.
And those challenges, if we recognize they're for our learning and growth anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Some more than others. So just tell us a little bit more about, going from a mum in your 20s as a widow, and what progressed you into doing what you're doing now, and then explaining a bit more about Die Live and what you do there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Die Live was always brewing in me, and I would not have known that it was. I remember the month after my husband had passed, and I had a 3-month-old when he passed and a 2-year-old. And I went to my dad's 50th birthday a month later, and I remember standing in the backyard there. They were having a barbecue, just a low-level event, and I was in grief, and I was watching these other people who had it all. They had their house, their jobs, everything seemed easy for them. And the lack of joy in the place was palpable to me. I can just remember thinking, wow, you have so much, and yet you look at you. And I remember thinking, when death comes knocking for all of us, as it will, I knew for me at that point, I wanted it to find me living. And that's where the name of my business later came from, was that concept of, I want to die live. Like, I think about people describing what they do: jump high, sleep well, think hard, die live. That's what I want to do. And so what led me to being in this business, I remarried about a year and a half later. And we formed a company, the man I married, and we formed a company and operated that for 23 years. And then that marriage ended, and I had 3 daughters by then, and they left home and started families of their own. And I really remember just standing in my little kitchen. I'd never lived on my own before. And I was standing there at the age of nearly 50. And I thought, I've got to start living my life. Like, I'd been running a company to support my husband. So I just started thinking, I have to live my life, and I have no idea who I am. That's how I felt. And so I actually typed in my Google search. I'm a bit embarrassed to say, but I thought, how do I figure out who I am? So I put in living authentically into the Google search, and up popped YouTube, and Bob Proctor was one of the people, and I didn't know who he was. And I clicked on him thinking, and such was my state of mind at that point, I thought, what does this old guy know about living authentically? And he had his flip chart and his texter as he did. And I listened, and it just hit me right here. And I thought, I need to hear what he has to say. And it was only 48 hours or less later that I was having a conversation with one of his salespeople, and I signed up to work with him without really knowing what I was doing, to be honest. I just knew I had to hear more from him. So
amazing. Yeah. And that's that part of that. There's a couple of things there, the Die Live part, but a lot of people are just doing. They're not living. They're just doing, and everything becomes methodical, and as you said, there's a lot of where it's missing out on the joy. And I've said this for for a long time, 30, 40 years. I want on I won't have a gravestone, but I want on my epitaph is she never missed out on a thing. And that's what I want, how I live my life, and I started doing my own story the other day. We were talking a little bit earlier about how I help people create their stories. And I started doing one of my own, and the first line is, people often say she'll turn up to the opening of an envelope, and that and that just describes me. But it's living, but it's consciousness. This is being conscious of what you're doing, isn't it? That's the big difference.
Yeah. And that is the big difference, because there was, in essence, nothing wrong with my father's 50th birthday, except that when I looked at these people, there just wasn't any consciousness of what they had. They were just going through the motions, like you said. And it's interesting when I talk about that, because my wake-up call was a few months later from that event, when my young daughter, who was heading towards 3 years old, actually demanded of me, in a moment of tension between the two of us, she demanded that I bring in her daddy. She wanted her daddy. And the way she demanded that of me really arrested me. And I was only telling a crowd the other day, what happened in that moment changed me and the direction of my life forever. And I still feel it in me, this fire that she lit, because what I heard her saying was, if you're not going to show up, then bring in someone I know will. I was just going through the motions, literally. And that episode there saw me have a rant with God, as if he was sitting on my roof, let out all the pus, I would say, of my prior life. And it was only after that I could actually receive that thought of, well, what now? What do you want? Like, where are you going from here? So
and then obviously open then to another relationship coming in.
Yeah, and life, like live life. I just hadn't been living life. Due to events that had happened in my childhood. There's a good reason, you might say, for why I was like I was, but I'm the only one that could change that. And
that's a good lead into childhood as well. I was at an event today, and the speaker was very much on health, and she's a naturopath kinesiologist and probably one of the best in Australia. Just the knowledge that she has, and came back to part of the stuff with physically and toxins and everything that we load up in childhood, but it's also that toxic thought processes that we have in childhood. They might not be evil, and there might not be violence or anything, but they're toxic. They're just simple things can. The book I read a while ago called Jolt, that just change in that instant, that jolt you to think differently about something, isn't it?
And Bob spoke about that a lot, and he helped after I'd done 7 years of therapy when I was a young mum, after I married the second time. And I came out of that knowing, like I knew, that I was broken because of my childhood, and that I had to limp through life with what I had. And I was actually happy with that, surprisingly. I thought, great, now I know why I'm so, like I am.
You got a label. There's lots of labels out there now.
Exactly. And I started living that to the best I could. When I met Bob, and he told me, probably in that first video I heard of him, he suggested that I could change my personality, that I didn't have to stay as I was. And he was very big on making us realize that every way that we were operating was just because of the thoughts that had been planted and that were now, operating us. We were not consciously living. And so, what I really gleaned from that, and what started the little spark of confidence in me, because I was not at all confident. I was good at pretending, but man, it took a lot of energy, and I felt so insecure. But when I started to learn that actually the life in me wants expression, the life in me. So that's quite a force within me.
I'm writing that down, because I think that is such a powerful statement. The life in me wanted expression.
Yeah. And that's what I could feel rumbling up the day that my little daughter said, bring in my dad. Like, I want to see my dad. And I'd been conscious in the days leading up that there was a rumbling in me. And I thought, I've got to keep this down. I've got to keep this down. But actually, it's the life force saying, come on, this is you. And when people say to me, I don't feel confident, I didn't feel confident either, but I didn't feel anything. When I allowed myself to feel, then I actually started to become aware there's something in me. And so that little spark, I'd had the thought only days prior to the conversation with my little one, that if any of this feeling ever gets to see the light of day, I'm in deep trouble, because I could feel the forcefulness of it, the power of it. And I thought, I don't think I can keep this in anymore. I didn't know what it was at that stage.
No, interesting. And the thought that I need to keep it in also, as opposed to, no, it's there for a reason, and let me own it. Yeah.
And like you said, we've been taught and raised in many ways, all of us, and the thoughts that we think repeatedly become our beliefs. And so I believed I was to be quiet. I believed I was to show no, and my childhood had been a practice of that, just showing no emotion, nothing to see here, remaining quiet. Yeah.
How many children in your family, just out of interest, and where did you fit?
Yeah, 4 children, and I was number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not surprising then.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm an oldest child, and it's a very different space.
Yeah. Well, and when I talk with my siblings now, they, we talk about our childhood, they have such a different view of it. And yet there we all were together. So
my sister and I have a different understanding of the issues that went on as well. And what's really interesting, we have a very different expression of our parents passing and connection to it, and ability to move on from it, not away from it, but move on from the emotion, and be aware of, they still have the love there and the missing, but it's, for me, it's not the intensity that it is for my sister. But I had different experience particularly with my mother passing, where I had a conversation with her as she went. So that was quite a different space. So it was a blessing.
Yes.
And knowing it was, as opposed to saying it was. And that's a different space.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That real belief. Yeah. And that, that for me is what changed in me when I started to understand, again, the power of life in me. And who was I to stand and argue with, fight, shove down the very essence of the expression of life with and through me? That's impressed me now. It's been impressed upon me. And, even in times like right now, I'm going through something that's challenging me and growing me. And I was saying to a friend this morning, I have no choice but to go there, because I know where it's coming from. I haven't just conjured this up myself. It's like life is saying this, I'm purpose built for my purpose. Let's go.
Interesting. And so when you turn 50 and so much changed in those last years, how did that work with family and friends?
Interestingly, and again, everything's designed so well, isn't it? So Bob was in Canada, and I started flying over after the first 18 months of just doing training online. I started going to his live trainings in Canada 3 times a year. And again, a massive step of faith for me, because my business wasn't really up and running, but I was determined to glean as much as I could from this man. And so across I went, and every time I went there, I knew nobody there knew me. And so I was able and free to be me, to just be in a space where I could just be. And I did a lot of travel in those next few years. And actually COVID, I was over there from January to October, late October. So 10 months, which was unplanned.
Mm-hmm.
However, that separation from my routines, the people that knew me, my family, it was good for me. It gave me an opportunity to really have some solid time. And I think that's where my retreats come from that I was talking about earlier, just to step away, have some space in nature, to be and to really just sit with who you are and allow what's in you to rise. It's very powerful.
Yes, and to be, because we are beings. So
Yes.
knowing how to be is such an important part of,
Yeah.
and you know, we all forget, no matter how much knowledge or awareness we have, that all of a sudden we're not being, we're
Yeah.
busy, you know, that
Yeah.
word, and things are happening around you, so you're just responding, you're not creating the difference.
Well, and often we're reacting even.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're so right. The way I work with people now is very deliberate in helping them regularly check in to say, oh, hang on, what's going on in me? You know, what do I want? Bob was big on that, as you know. That was one of his favorite things to ask people. What do you want? What do you really want?
Yeah.
And it was powerful. It is powerful to ask yourself that.
And most people would never do that. And most people, because you can't be the most important person in your life. There's always somebody else that you've got to address or help or assist or, you know, speak to. I know, you know, I'm working with someone at the moment, and they're Muslim and they don't wear the hijab when they're out, as long as their family doesn't know. So they put on, and what they said, they put on their uniform. You know, so we put on a uniform, and that's physical, but we put on uniforms, don't we? And depending on the situation we're in as to what uniform we're wearing. Yeah.
I felt like I'd lived my life like that. I had so many hats and I could be anything because on the surface, because I wasn't in touch with the feeling. And I remember when I first started working with Bob, and it was the very early days, just started working with him, and I went over to Ireland to this retreat run by somebody else. And it was a week long, and I cried for 7 days. This emotion just kept coming and coming and coming. And because I knew nobody, I just let it come. I didn't even know, I didn't even have a thought attached to it. I just was very emotional. But I think that connection with that's connection with ourselves.
So what do you do in your work when you're working with your clients now?
I actually still follow loosely the framework that Bob Proctor used to teach. And that was helping them to discover what's in them that's looking to be expressed. So when we say, what do you want? It's like, what do you really want? Not what do you think or dream up that you can conjure up, but what do you really desire to do and be and have and create in this life? And so that's the very first thing, is to help them be very conscious of where they're at and where they want to go. And then the work is us lining up with that which we want. And when we've realized this is a desire of my heart, which indicates that I have the power within me to do and be and have and create that, even though we might not see the physical evidence of what we need. I went up to Cairns a couple of weeks ago and spoke to 400 people from the stage. When I started working with Bob, that was something that wasn't even on my mind. I was shy, withdrawn. I used to watch him do it and think, wow, I'd love to be able to do that, but I couldn't do that. And so it's that change in people when I didn't even realize, but I'm very comfortable doing that now. So it's, I coach, mentor people, not to give them information, but to help them with their transformation. We're practicing what we're learning every day.
And that's the results, whenever you're doing any sort of training, coaching, or you're receiving mentoring, to get a result, it's like you mentioned, you went to psychologists for 7 years.
Yeah.
And again, it was part of a conversation this morning. Is rehashing or working through things really the way to do it? And I'm not making myself out to be an expert on psychology under any circumstances. The question I'm asking is rehashing a way to do it, or is, as Bob would say, just change the way you think?
That's right. And that's what was refreshing for me, because I knew my story.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how many times I described that to somebody, it didn't change anything. But what it did change was it made me more and more identified with that story. And if you were to speak with Bob as I did, I would often go to say something and he would cut me off and say, don't talk about that. And then he'd ask me a question, basically to turn my attention from something that wasn't making me feel good and I didn't want more of, to this. And can I tell you a story? One day in 2020, he would call me up and say, come and see me. And I came to see him, and my second flight home had been cancelled during that rough time over the 2020 period. And I was upset. I was seeing Christmas coming and I was not seeing any way of getting home to Australia. So I'd gone around and I sat opposite him. He was behind his desk at this stage, and I was crying, and I just wanted him to hug me and say it was going to be all right, be a bit of a grandfather to me, because I'd sort of had enough, really. And he sat me down and he said, so what's going on? And I told him, and he said, I know why you're not feeling very good. I thought, oh, he's got to have a revelation. He said, you're thinking about things that you don't want. And I said, Bob, it's happening. Like, it's not that I don't want it, it's happening. And he said, yeah, it's happened. He said, but the worst part about this is you're not ignorant of thought energy and how things are manifested in your life. You're not ignorant of that. So that means right now in this moment, you're acting like a stupid person. He said to me. And it
Love it.
In my throat. And I thought, I thought some things I won't repeat on this, but I thought, honestly, that's what you've got to say to me today. And I'm so grateful to him to this day, because minutes later he went on to teach, as he always did in our conversations, and he was teaching me, and I said the words which you don't say around Bob often. I said, yes, I understand that. And he got up out of his chair and he shuffled around, took him forever, and then he came and sat right next to me, and he looked at me without saying a word, and then he looked right in my eyes and he said, if you really understood that, you'd never think another negative thought in your life. And it was like, oh. So he was such, I think, a master at this. He lived every single day. He never told you what you wanted to hear, ever. He told you the truth. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. I was with some friends the other day, and we had a card day. And we started off with the intention to play for about 4 hours, and 8 hours later we were still playing cards. And we travel a bit together and go camping and things, and they're in their 60s, mid-60s as well. And you get to your 60s and you've got some ailments, but we don't talk about it. But we were talking about how we notice other people are talking about them a lot.
Yeah.
It's just, and it is where you put your spotlight of focus is where you will find more of the same thing. And the more you repeat the story, it becomes your story also. And I got caught up in a story with someone recently, and I found offense in the way that they treated me, and it went a little bit further. And then I saw this post on Facebook, and it was a donkey and a tiger arguing. And the donkey was saying the grass is purple. And the tiger said, no, the grass is green. And they were arguing for ages. And the donkey was saying the grass is purple. And we said, well, take it to the lion. So they took their grievance to the lion. And the lion said, the grass is purple. And the tiger, he said to the tiger, your penalty for being wrong is you won't be able to, you're not allowed to talk for 2 years. And then, but the tiger then asked the lion and said, so well, how come I've got the penalty? The grass is obviously green. And the lion said, yeah, the grass is green, but you're stupid enough to argue with the donkey. And it really hit home with me that it was perfect timing. It just popped up at the right time. And it went, Janine, you've forgotten. I've been arguing with a donkey.
Yes.
And I've been taking offense from a donkey who I don't care whether they respect me or not.
That's right.
They're not important to me.
Yeah. Do you know, and that's what you say is so gold, because that's what I witnessed with this master who'd been studying it for 60 years. And he used to say to me every time I saw him, I'd say, give me something to tell the clients, because here I am right in front of you. Tell me something. And he'd always say, study every day. He was like, fill your mind with the truth every single day. And I just watched him live from that place. Nothing, it was like he was unshakable. And the things he did, Janine, right to the end, like he always said he'd work right to the end. And that's what he did. And then he was ill, and then he passed very quickly. But he didn't waste time talking about things he didn't want.
And it's really interesting. All these, I think, memories are popping up for me. You know, I turned up at a party, and it was when I was first starting doing a lot of energy work, and I turned up at a party, and there was one person I was observing that people would go and talk to him, and then within a few minutes they'd walk away. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And I like a challenge. I started talking to him. And what I found was our conversation wasn't what I would term as washing machine conversation. It was value conversation, like what we're having now, and thoughts and ideas on things. And I didn't realize that then that nearly everyone had gone home hours later, and we were still talking. It was such an interesting space to be in, and I know there's a lot of times where you're just having washing machine conversation. It's not good or bad, it just is. But to have that opportunity that's one of the reasons I love doing my podcast, is because I have conversations with amazing people like you, Di, that there's different thought process. You can be in a space where you can think differently and
and we're all so different. That's what I love. Like, imagine if everybody was, and that's one of my goals is to just help every person that I can be so fully them, because we're so unique. And can you imagine the beautiful tapestry of life if we were all confidently showing up as ourselves, without any mask, without any holding back? Just amazing, how powerful.
And I would think then that if people are true within themselves, there'd be little need to be violent towards others or aggressive towards others, because you don't have to. It's not in your reality.
Well, and that's the first indication of someone that isn't confident. And you know, I didn't know that years ago, but now, knowing what I know about being confident, like, confidence is alignment with who we truly are. And you know, it doesn't mean you're loud. You know, only confident people will speak out. You might be very quiet, but it feels comfortable. You know, comfortable in your own skin. You're comfortable in silence. You're comfortable to speak to hundreds of people. You're just comfortable because you know who you are, and you know that you know. And like you said, it doesn't matter who's speaking to you with their opinion. You just know, well, this is me. You know, if someone said to me now, oh, you couldn't speak to 400 people. Years ago, I would have been with them and gone, yeah, I'm not sure I can. But now they can't tell me that, because I know I can. I have. And that's what confidence is. It's like, what's keeping us stuck is our attachment to something that's not true. But, you know, our story has happened, but it's not who we are.
No, it's something that's happened to us, and often something that's happened for us.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
I know I used to really look forward to these daily emails. They're all Bob's quotes, and it was just a wonderful time. And I think I received them for years. That was,
yeah, do you know, Jenny, life is such a beautiful unfolding. And like I said, I pinch myself daily almost to think how I got to be where I am now. Bob's shared stories with me about his journey and the struggles he had, because he too was very convinced this was what he was here to do. And he said there were days he didn't know how he was going to pay his rent when he had a young family. And back in that day, without all of this technology, he was doing it hard, and people weren't talking like we can now freely talk about energy and thought and things like that. But he used to look me in the eye, and those blue eyes of his, he'd just look me in the eye and he'd say, "Don't you ever give up." And if you ever said something to Bob like, I won't, then you can't go back on it, because it's like there was an agreement.
yeah, promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he handed me this baton. That's how it felt. Like me of all people, it's the way it worked out. And he gave me so much. And I felt like he entrusted me to run with that. And he often said to me, "Go and do with this, do it in your way."
Yeah,
that's
yeah, amazing.
mm.
Yeah, very, very, very blessed. I think I'd have to come to Adelaide, and I think we could talk for hours as well.
I would love that.
It would be a great deal of fun. Or you can come north during winter and
Let's check the weather and we'll go where it's sunny.
yeah, beautiful day outside. We're complaining here it's cold,
Yeah.
temperature today, the maximum's 21. So we're rugged up in jumpers and everything.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's beautiful and sunny outside, which is very nice.
Mm.
Yes, as I said, we could talk for hours on this, and it'd be like me standing with that gentleman. And it was so funny because that party, it was in winter, and it started to get really cold, and I've looked around because there's nobody else in the room, and it was created that space. But I could understand why other people had walked away from having conversations with him. It just wasn't that they were looking for at that particular time.
Yes, that's right. And that's the interesting thing about connections, isn't it? The resonance. Thought is energy. It's a frequency. And when you meet somebody that is on the same frequency, there's the resonance there, and you just, you meet people and you think, "Oh, I feel like we've known each other a very long time." It's just that we're really on that same frequency. And there are people on all sorts of frequencies, and we're not necessarily going to feel the connection. However, what I know to be true is the very essence of every single person is the same. I was expressing this the other night to a small group, that we were talking about the life in us and how powerful that is. And I said, if you're not living a life of prosperity, of confidence, of joy, it's not due to a lack in you. It's due to our shoving down or locking up or not allowing the expression, the twisting of the conduit of us through our mind. Because the energy in us, if you think about the sun, and the days where you see the sun rays across the road or across a paddock, you see the rays of the sun. We know that each and every one of those sun rays is coming from the sun. So it can't be anything but a sun ray. It can't be a moonbeam. It's coming from the sun. Now, it's individualized. It's an expression of the sun, but it's still the sun. The life in us is individualized. It's an individualized expression of life because it's coming from the source of life, which is joy, expansion, expression, all of those things, well-being, abundance. And so if we're not experiencing that in our conscious life, then it's us that has to have a look at why that is, because there's nothing lacking in the life in us.
Interesting. And that's a big step of understanding.
Yes.
People. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it is much easier to blame the outside world.
Oh, yes.
Things. I know that. I think that was one of the hardest things that of acceptance for me was it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not again. It's not my fault,
Yeah.
but it is my responsibility.
Yeah. And I think our escape hatch there, not that there is an escape hatch, but I think the softening of that is, okay, I'm consciously aware that I'm not enjoying this. And now I'm consciously aware that it's my responsibility to have a look at what's going on. But the reason things are happening to us, for us in our life, is because we are aligned with those things. And so when we change what's going on in our deep subconscious, in our state of being, we start to attract differently. And so it's a joyful recognition, but it's also one, like you said, that's like, oh, okay, I did this. Yeah.
Yep. It's that, okay, and it's the driver, the bus driver of your own life, and how you
Yeah.
do that. And I do that when I'm working with people with their business. And as you said, Bob's question is what do you want your life to be? Or, mine is very much what do you want to create when it comes to business? So what is it that you want to create? Well, I want to create a business. No, what is it? What is it? Is it something that is going to bring you joy? Is that what you want to create? Or do you want something that's hard work? Or, what do you want to create?
Yes.
And then getting people to really step back and figure out what it is, or maybe put a time limit on it. What is it that you want to happen in the next 10 years?
And I'm glad you mentioned time. We were talking about this yesterday, how interesting it is if we don't put a time on something. I remember the first time Bob walked up to me in a training and he said, what do you want? And I told him in shaking boots, and he said, when do you want it by? And I said, 5 years. Oh my goodness. And I know all the other experienced consultants would have been, going, oh God, she said that. And he looked at me and he said, so you don't really want it then? I said, no, I do want it. He said, why? Don't you want it now? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. And then I went on to say why I couldn't have it. And
that would have gone down well.
oh, really well. And so if we don't set a time, because I didn't want to set a time close because I didn't know how it was going to happen. The whole point is we don't have to know how, we just have to know what. What do you want? And then the process of understanding how it all comes together is something we grow in our understanding of that. Our part in it is to see what we want and to feel like it's done, because that's actually the truth. In the spiritual level, it's like, I can see it, so therefore it's done. Now how, what's the road? And that's the intuitive journey, right? Yeah.
But we often focus so much on the how.
Always.
And it comes from here, the brain, for those that are listening, not watching. I'm pointing to my head. It comes from the mind as opposed to coming from the gut or the health of the heart.
Right. That's right. And we've been studying faith this week and for the last couple of weeks, actually. And that's our little torch, really, is, the faith light, because you can't see. And often we're standing on what seems like an edge of an abyss, but we feel like we're facing the right direction, but we've got no indication of anything solid that's going to help us forward. And I heard a quote right early on that said, when we get to the end of that light and all that we can see, and we take that step into what appears to be darkness, one of two things is going to happen. And this is what faith is. One of two things will happen. We'll either stand on something solid or we'll be taught to fly. And that impacted me hugely.
Wow. Yeah, so either option's great.
Exactly. And do you know what was going through my head as the man read it really slowly? He said, you'll stand on something solid. And my mind said the next sentence was going to be, or you'll fall, to your death.
Yeah.
When he said to learn to fly, I could feel my soul just, was good.
I'm going to write that down too.
It's a beautiful quote. Yeah.
It certainly is. We're coming towards the end, Di. We have a point where we have 3 takeaways. And there's been a lot of our conversation, but the things that you really want people to understand if they don't remember anything else.
So the confidence in us. I really want people to understand that you have confidence already and that you can actually access that by understanding who you are, like that powerful life in you. You're a body, a human body, but you have a being, and that being is unstoppable. Someone described it to me like a fire hose. You know, the force of that is enormous. And so let that be your recognition and realization so that you can step forward towards your desires with confidence. So that's number one. Our story keeps us stuck. And often we're so practiced at living our story, most people are, that it's actually got a life of its own, and we are not conscious of regurgitating it every day. So we have a conditioning. That's what's keeping us stuck. And Bob used to say to me, you can't change your own conditioning. It's like trying to string yourself up by your own bootstraps. And I thought, that's pretty tough to do. Because you are the conditioned being, you must get someone outside of you to help you see what it is and help you to do what you do to change it, which is the essence of what I do. The third thing is the practice every single day. We want to practice connecting with who we are. And I find the quickest and easiest way to do that is gratitude. Because what in essence is happening when we connect with gratitude about anything, it could be that you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, I love my warm bed. That's gratitude. And as we get into that state of gratitude, which comes from the way we think and then feel, and we're in this state of gratitude, we're actually clicking into alignment with the very essence of who we are.
I love it. Yeah, that's
powerful practice.
It absolutely is. It made me think this morning. I had an early breakfast meeting, so I've had a shower early, and I've got in the shower and I've gone, oh, I'm so grateful my hot water system is just outside the window here and I get instant hot water. So
Exactly.
that was my first thought of the day was,
yeah,
fabulous hot water. Yeah.
And that's as simple as it can be, just practicing that.
Yeah. And that really, and it is that grateful practice that people forget to just recognize how blessed they are. Just even when maybe you have a good thought. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I was thinking that, right? And looking forward rather than that. You don't want to bring that the opposite. Yeah.
No, exactly. There's so many little things that in practicing that will turn the tide, for us.
Yeah, excellent. I have absolutely loved our conversation. How can people get in touch with you and what you're doing as well, Di?
Yes, we have a lot going on to meet anyone where they're at. Our website is DILIVE, so DILIVE.com.au. And you can contact me on email, di@dilive.com.au, and I'll be only too happy to chat with you. So
nice and easy.
Yeah, we're on socials as well, but you'll find those from the website and others. So
yeah, no, thank you very much for your conversation and all of your great insights from that amazing man as well. And all of your contact details will be in the show notes, so people will be able to follow that up. So thank you, Di. I've loved our conversation.
Thank you so much, Janine. Thank you.
And that's another episode of the We Are Women podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember to leave a comment on what things that you've listened to today and thought, well, maybe that's what I'm going to apply and how I'm going to do that. I love hearing from everyone. And I remember I heard from somebody in one of the remote Queensland towns when I was on my travels that listened to the podcast, which is always exciting. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's always a joy to know that bringing value, and my guests are bringing value and changes to you. Remember to go to JanineVosper.com, book a strategy call. We can have a conversation. And if I can't help you with what you are working through at the moment, then I have a lot of contacts and people that I can recommend. Have a fantastic day, week, month, as I usually sign off, wherever you are in the world. I look forward to you joining me next time on the We Are Women podcast.
So, Do you feel stuck in a rut in business? Visit speechperfect.com.au and download Janine's free ebook to avoid the 5 most common stumbling blocks women face in business. It's jam-packed full of tips to overcome the barriers that could be holding you back from the success that you dream your business will be. We would love you to leave a review of today's episode and share this podcast with other women in need of entrepreneurial inspiration. Subscribe to the next episode now and join the We Are Women community.